Welcome back, this is Volt. I hope you enjoy. Last time we successfully reforged the lead seal, so it's time to end our second cycle. Our next target is this silver seal, and there are two routes we could go to get there. We can either loop around to the left following the points of interest, or to the right. On the right we have the Overgrown Library modifier, which replaces one of our starting blueprints with a wildcard blueprint to pick any building that we want. And on the left we have the Petrified Necropolis modifier, which grants us 5 meat every time we produce 10 stone or clay. So both modifiers are positive, but I slightly prefer this left route because it opens up more points of interest for us to choose from, which means more chances to find a world event that doesn't take up the time of a full settlement, such as the Black Amber Syndicate that we used in our last run. So we'll start in this Marshlands biome, a map focused on gathering with giant resource nodes in the Forbidden Glades. And we have the opportunity to take bats for the first time. It does look like the best caravan here. There's extra food, and having frogs for the Firekeeper bonus is great as well. The human caravan is also decent, with the extra pipes for another rain engine to start with. But I've never had a chance to play with the bats before, so let's try them out. We've unlocked the Herbalist Camp as an embarkation option, but it would cost all of our embarkation points, so it isn't worth it even on Marshlands. So as always, we'll take starting villages and wood to get a faster start. The meat and veg are cheap, so we'll take those two. And our last point can be used on some eggs. We're also going to turn the difficulty up to Prestige 8, which makes villagers use more service goods when they take breaks, which is a fairly tame effect compared to the recent Prestige difficulties. And we're ready to go. Our Drizzle Forest mystery this game is Golden Dust, which grants us clearance water for producing drizzle water. At Hostility 2, we consume more fuel in our hearths, scaling with our hostility level. Our villagers' resolve also drops faster, and villagers without housing have a chance to perish. This is particularly tough on the frogs, because they don't use basic housing. And at Hostility 4, if we don't pay 3 wood for every villager in our settlement, 2 of them will leave. The Prestige 8 effect adds a 50% chance to consume double the amount of service goods. Our starting glade has an algae pond and 5 mushroom nodes. Let's look at our first blueprint. Some great options here. The lumber mill gets us 3-star planks, which is always good, and we can actually use our starting water skins to make packs of trade goods. The carpenter can also produce planks, as well as packs of luxury goods, which we've utilised a lot in the last few games. And the fishing hut could be good, depending on what's in our dangerous glade. I think the market is the only one that is clearly bad, with no villagers that like leisure or treatment and an underwhelming passive effect. We'll hold off on that blueprint selection until we open our first dangerous glade, which I think we should do right away. We definitely want to find a resource node that allows us to take advantage of the world map modifier. And if we do find a stone or clay source, it allows us to make bricks for the frog houses. So we'll start very basic with 2 woodcutter camps and a rain collector, as well as a frog firekeeper for our newcomers to arrive faster. And the last couple of villages can just build our roads and set up our town. It's time for our first cornerstone. Usually trade logs is pretty good, but it's not so good at the start of the cycle when we only have 2 trading partners. And traders arriving 25% quicker is fine, but probably not better than 10 amber. Farsight is interesting. It gets better on higher prestige difficulties where amber is worth less and glade events take longer. I'm not sure it's very good on prestige 8, but we can at least wait and see what's in our dangerous glade before we decide on it. And the same goes for grain bags. It could be good, but totally depends on what's in our dangerous glade. Our first batch of orders is here. Both of these orders have some decent rewards, especially the villagers. and so we want to complete them as early as possible to get the extra workforce. Meat lover is cheap, but the problem is that we only have one villager that actually wants to eat jerky, so even if we get a few more in the next batch of newcomers, it's still going to take a long time. Amber trade is more expensive, but I think we can still probably do it before the end of the year, and I think the earlier extra villagers is worth the extra price. Relics is expensive, and the rewards are slightly better to compensate, but we would be gambling on finding an ancient tablet in this dangerous glade. Whereas the rewards for cyst cultivation are a bit more mediocre, but 3 cysts is very easy to do and free. I would wait to open the glade, but I still want to see our next order before we open the glade, so we'll go with cyst cultivation here. The rewards for booming economy are great here. It gets us extra villagers, which are always good, and the 10 amber we would need to complete the other order. On the other hand, Metal Veins has some good rewards for a long industrial game. +2 to copper bars can go a long way into making some tools, but these booming economy rewards just accelerate us so much. So we have another goal now for this season, to set up our trading post and maybe get some trade routes going. There's plenty going on in this dangerous glade. There are some small and large leather nodes, and some fertile soil. And then we have 3 glade events, the first of which is the Ruined Tinkerer, which could be rebuilt to produce tools, training gear, and pottery, or salvage for some tools and boots. There's a large encampment, from which we can get 6 extra villagers. And then there's our dangerous glade event, the Merchant Shipwreck. If we don't resolve it, it will destroy one of our cornerstones. We don't currently have any, so it could be a good tactic to ignore this. But in order to resolve it, we could search the upper deck at the cost of impatience, clothing, and building materials to get some tablets and containers. Or we can search the lower deck at the cost of some various metal goods and a massive hostility penalty to get a reputation point and a lot of amber. So before we fully decide what to do with the glade, let's first decide on these cornerstones. I think trade logs got slightly better with our order choices, but not by enough to make it worth more than the 10 amber. We didn't find any grain source, so grain bags is clearly not good. So the only question to ask then is if Farsight is any good with all the glade events that we found. I think the answer is going to be no. My reasoning is this: we want to do this large encampment right away to expand our workforce as soon as we can. And it wouldn't be worth opening a small glade just to boost this 2-minute timer. So ideally we do it alongside another glade event, such as this ruin. Ideally we're going to salvage this ruin to get the tools that we can use to solve the shipwreck event, but we don't currently have stone, clay, or reed that we would need to salvage it, which means we won't really be able to do it alongside the large encampment event. And even then, these are 2 very short glade events, so we're still not getting that much value out of Farsight unless we can also do the merchant shipwreck with it. And unfortunately, both of these solutions are obscenely expensive. The most realistic one is this tools, as we said, because we can get 6 tools from salvaging the ruin, and also 6 tools from the order that we selected earlier. So all in all, I think that makes Farsight not the best choice here either. I think the orders that we chose also push us towards declining. The 10 extra amber makes it far easier to complete these value of goods sold tasks. And on top of that, by declining to take a cornerstone, we prevent the merchant shipwreck from being able to do anything to us with the negative effect if we fail to resolve it in time. So declining definitely seems like the strongest option to me here. As soon as our villagers finish building this trading post, we can assign them to the encampment to expand our workforce. So that is the new priority number 1. And with that expanded workforce, it would be good to start harvesting these leather nodes, so long as we can find a blueprint that actually uses the leather. We could use the leather to make scrolls, which are good for the bats, but the ideal service that we want to hit this game is the training gear. So in that case, we would be taking scrolls just to make them into luxury goods, in which case I'd probably rather have the luxury goods recipe than the scrolls recipe. Leather can also go into packs of trade goods via water skins, but water skins also go into a lot of luxury resources, so I think the carpenter here is just a little bit too much more versatile. There's no reason to take the fishing hut, I think, with no large pond, and we already dismissed the market. I would normally be very happy to see these large gathering camps on Marshlands, but I think it's too much of a gamble to just take any of them before getting into a forbidden glade. So I can narrow it down to the temple and the bakery. The temple does hit some service needs, but the passive effect is not very good. So I like the bakery here. The flour foods cover all of our species. We have good inputs for flour in the starting glade with the mushrooms and algae. Once again, gambling on the forager's camp doesn't seem very smart in this position. The pantry doubles up on a lot of recipes that we already have, and we don't really have blueprints that use these in manufactory recipes, which means we'd only be taking it for the fabric. So I think the stamping mill is the clear best pick here. 2-star bricks is great, and we just picked a complex food building that needs flour, and even copper bars is a good recipe to have to make tools in our carpenter, or potentially training gear. So with no immediate blueprint that uses our leather, there's no real rush to start gathering these leather nodes. So once we get the extra workforce from this encampment event, we should start making some complex food in the bakery as our next priority. I've immediately called our first trader to see if we can complete our orders and accelerate our game.
Hello.
By buying 6 tools, we remove the need to salvage our Tinkerer Ruin, which we can then rebuild to get the training gear recipe. It's very expensive, but we need to do 20 value of goods sold anyway, so we can use the amber we got from declining the cornerstone and a couple of spare parts, and with that we can also afford the 6 planks that we need to make the carpenter and avoid using the crude workstation. We still have no way to make fabric, which is required for both the carpenter and the cookhouse, so we'll need to call another trader after Zorg leaves, and that will let us do the remaining 5 amber worth of trades to complete the order. One option we could have gone with, but I decided against, was this herb garden. We do have the fertile soil for it, and the herbs we can use in both biscuits and pies. The only problem is that 17 amber is extremely expensive, and buying blueprints doesn't count towards our value of goods sold order. Our new villagers are here from the large encampment, and Sahilda has arrived.
Hi.
And we've found our source of fabric. With 9 fabric we can make the carpenter, the bakery and another small warehouse. It will cost us a couple of wildfire essence, but we'll get that back on completing our trade orders anyway.
Yes.
So booming economy is now complete, which gets us the 10 amber we need to also complete amber trade. So we got 4 extra villagers, and 2 new blueprints to pick. This time I think the farm building is a genuinely good option. We can grow berries, which goes into both biscuits and pies. I think it's a great pick if we can set it up before the start of year 2. I think that is possible with the massive influx of workers that we just got. Looking at the other options, we don't have a use for the trapper's camp. The tinctuary would only be good to make luxury goods, to pack into packs of luxury goods, but I think that's a bit too distant to concern ourselves with at the moment. So the butcher is the most competitive option, but I simply think we don't have the meat input to sustain skewer and jerky production, and we've already basically solved complex food with our bakery. These options feel very mediocre. There's a lot of doubling up on recipes, like planks, flour and training gear. The fishing hut is also not very useful. Maybe the best option is the lumber mill. We initially took the carpenter for the pack of luxury goods recipe over the lumber mill, and we could still use it for that purpose with the scrolls recipe. And the other advantages of the lumber mill are obviously the faster and more efficient plank production, as well as it not costing planks to build, which would let us make our next production building earlier. We could consider re-rolling when we get the amber. The only building I would be really excited about is a service building that gets us brawling, but I think we have better uses for 10 amber than re-rolling, so let's pick the lumber mill and change our plan from building the carpenter first to the lumber mill. I missed recording this, but I also bought these bricks from Sahilda to afford our production buildings and second hearth and warehouse. With all of our new workers, it's time to set up our second hub. It makes sense to place the hearth and warehouse near the ruined tinkerer that we're going to rebuild, as well as our farm. We also have the resources now to deal with this shipwreck, but we won't be able to deal with the hostility. But seeing as we declined our cornerstone earlier, we can let this threat trigger, and only work towards completing this glade event during next drizzle when it's a lot safer. We have some very unhappy bats and lizards, so we need to start thinking about building some housing and upgrading our main hearth before the storm hits. With this second hub set up, it will be far easier to set up our farm and deal with this shipwreck. It has the extra effect of taking a big chunk out of our hostility, which is very important because we're not going to be able to house our frogs. We simply don't have the means to make the bricks that we need for their houses, so it will be critical that we get below hostility 2 during the storm. We have this nice trade route to run with our starting coal to increase our standing with the First Dawn Company. Thanks to our frog firekeeper, we have our first group of newcomers. We have all the tools we need for the Glade event, so I think we should definitely take this caravan with the 2 frogs. The coats could prevent our bats from leaving during the storm, and we're actually having some wood problems, so bringing some coal in for the hearths would be quite useful. We're going to have some food problems during this storm as we struggle to get our biscuits and pie online, so it would be really good to get these 3 blighrot cysts as soon as we can to earn the 30 jerky from this order. We've set up our farm and started producing complex food, but as expected we're running into some short-term resolve problems due to hunger. We're putting the last dregs of our raw food into these biscuits, but I think it will be a good idea to pull up the nets of this pond. It still has a lot of charges left, but we can use the herbs right away in our complex food. And the algae allows us to continue making flour, which we are currently unable to produce. In the short term, to keep resolve high, we're running rain engines with resolve in both the stamping mill and the bakery, which is also generating us some blightrot to go towards the order. We've weathered the worst of the storm, and while I certainly wouldn't call our complex food production stable, we at least have enough to get by until next clearance, which is when we'll be able to harvest our first yield of berries. We can also squeeze in 1 trade route to the Smoldering City to get its standing level up to level 1. Next year, a few more opportunities will open up to us. We'll be able to deal with this merchant shipwreck without worrying about the hostility, which will earn us a lot of amber and rep. It would also be good to find some more ways to boost resolve, such as housing our frogs and finding a way to make brawling. At the moment we have the recipes but not the inputs for those, so I think we have the workforce to open these 2 dangerous glades to look for those inputs. We'll also need to find a blueprint for the brawling, which means we'll need to get some reputation somehow, probably through glade events or next year's orders.